Alright guys, so welcome back. Today we're going to be making a little bit of a different weapon. Most people don't know a whole lot about it, but it was actually very prevalent from the early Middle Ages to the Renaissance, and that is the Middle Eastern scimitar. So this is the design I came up with. This kind, it was generally used around Turkey and Saudi Arabia in the Middle Ages in the first, second, third crusade time period. Has that fork point so it stabs better, but ultimately it's going to be front heavy because it needs more chopping force. It is best used on horseback, but it will do on land because of the thrusting point, and it will go up against body armor pretty well. Overall, single-edged swords will be the most efficient during an apocalyptic situation, simply because it takes less training. If you have two edges, that's one more edge you can cut yourself on, so ultimately this takes the least training, and people won't have time to train during an apocalypse. So I know there is a lot of controversy on curved blades versus straight blades. All I know is that for this situation I would prefer a curved blade. It will cut wood better, which is good in an apocalyptic situation. It will cut body armor better, which will be much more prevalent. Since ammunition will be lower because of the lack of lead and the fact that black powder will not work in guns that take smokeless powder, which are the majority of the guns nowadays, people will be wearing a lot more body armor. And a good source of body armor will be like leather, cloth, linen, things like that. And a curved blade, since less of the blade is hitting the armor at once than with a straight blade that hits all at once, that is much more force per square inch and will dent helmets better, and it will cut through more. The forked point is added just so it can stab in case you needed to get in close and get in under the rib cage in a combat situation, and your opponent had a longer weapon that you could get in close and make it defective. Alright, so now we're going to use our angle grinder. You're going to need a cutting wheel, and once your design's drawn out, you just put it in the vise and go ahead and start cutting. First, you're going to need some sort of breathing mask. You're going to need some safety glasses and some earplugs, because this can cause hearing damage. So now that the blade's cut out, I'm going to use the grinding wheel on the angle grinder to address some flaws with the blade. I will warn you, it is very hot when you grind the blade, so you need to use a pair of pliers to move the metal around. So now we're going to switch to the 80 grit belt for the sharpening to get it a little sharper and have a finer point on it. So since the blade is now sharp and it is a semi-functional weapon, you have to be extremely careful in these next few steps to make sure you don't cut yourself in the process. The first thing I'm going to do is clamp it down vertically in the vise, and I'm going to go back through the 36 grit, the 80 grit, and the 120 grit belts to polish the blade off and do some final touches on it. Alright, so the last thing we have to deal with is getting the handle on and comfortable for use. So I've just got this piece of wood, got it from the hardware store, and I got some Gorilla epoxy. So I'm going to mix the epoxy on this paper plate, and then I'm going to put it all over this piece of wood, and I'm going to clamp the sword to it. And for this I will need a C-clamp, which yes, I do have in here. Alright, so let's get started. Now we're going to let the epoxy set for 5 minutes. Make sure you read the label on what kind of epoxy you have. I've seen on TV people being in a timed competition trying to use 24-hour epoxy before they realized what they were doing. So keep in mind what you are doing. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and unclamp this first handle scale, and then do the same process on the other side. And we'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, so as you can see, the blade's looking pretty nice right now. The handle scales are glued on there pretty securely. So the next thing we're going to have to do is cut the excess wood off and then grind away at it so it feels comfortable in the hand. Now the geometry of everyone's hand is different, so yours might look just a little different than mine because, you know, I have fairly large hands, big fingers, but give or take it'll look the same. We're going to clamp the blade in the vise. I want to add, you want to have the blade clamped as close as possible to the handle to do this. And maybe angle it a little upward like this so you have a little more room. But really it's whatever floats your boat. It's your weapon, your methods. What works for you might not work for me. So as with all the other power tools, breathing mask is necessary, goggles and earplugs, which I have. Alright, so the next step I'm going to take is using the belt sander to grind the handle into shape. After we're done with all this handle making, we're probably going to have to end up repolishing the blade. Alright, so the sword turned out very nicely after the handle staining. I did not show that in the video because I want you guys to come up with your own design for handle shape and color. But needless to say, it's fun to slice things with this, so I'm going to show you what it can do. Got a little compilation I'm going to put together. Hopefully it doesn't get rained out, fingers crossed. So yeah. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you want to build in the future.